Welcome everyone. My name is Marcus Wu. I'm one of the professors in the School of Design and chief investigator in the Digital Media Research Centre. Welcome to our guest seminar, which is jointly hosted by the QUT Design Lab and the Digital Media Research Centre. I'd like to start by go on to our next slide, acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands we're gathered here, the Yagara and the Turrbal people that have their ancestry kind of lineage from north and south of the Brisbane River, and I pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We're also on significant land for the reasons that we are overseeing that land right now from our elevated position here, and that particular site, Victoria Park, also on Dorandon, the windy place, has been in the media more recently for a whole bunch of reasons. So there is a bit of a dispute between not just the traditional owners, but also some of the local communities that are fighting the proposed location of Olympic stadiums that will be built pretty much right behind those buildings here. So all the kinds of trees in that space there that you see in this corner of Victoria Park, it's going to be earmarked for the stadiums, and there is heritage protection on that land due to the cultural significance of country. Now, we're going to be talking about digital inequalities, digital inclusion, which aligns very well with some of our interests in the design lab around emerging technologies and how to make them more accessible, more fair, more equitable, but also with the DMRC's program on creating better digital futures, where we have quite a long history of looking at digital inclusion concerns and how technology features in that mix of providing access to people and to community groups. And we're really pleased to have Johanna with us, fresh off the plane this weekend, still a little bit jet lagged, but well caffeinated. I hope it hasn't worn off yet, otherwise you've got to wink at me for another shot of espresso. Johanna is joining us from Aalto University in Espoo, which is next to Helsinki in Finland, where she's been working on a postdoctoral fellowship that was awarded for 5 years by the Academy of Finland, and it's the title is, I think, on the slide that we had there, which you can see there. So we're really pleased to hear more from Johanna. We've known each other for quite some time because Johanna did her PhD at Aalto University. We had quite a long collaboration partnership with Aalto, because they are one of the pioneers, I suppose, not just in Finland, but in Europe, even, I would say, in the world when it comes to the deployment of ubiquitous computing technology in cities. So they were one of the first cities to embrace Wi-Fi infrastructure for free for the whole city back in the early 90s. They have, at the time, they had a very big array of urban screens, public displays, that were very high tech at the time, with webcams and Bluetooth and a whole bunch of proximity and location-based services. And so the department there has always been very, I suppose, pioneering when it comes to the deployment of smart city technology. But in this talk, we're also going to be looking at the other side, which is the equal or not so equal access to some of these feature services and platforms. So please join me in welcoming Johanna.
Thank you so much, Marcus, and thank you for having me here, and welcome to listen to this talk. I think I have to move here because we have the Zoom on, so that also online participants can kind of see me. So this is actually not the title of my project. This is just the title of the presentation. But in short, I will also introduce my project to you. So this is the outline of the presentation. So first, I thought that I will kind of talk a bit about my background very briefly. Then I'm going to introduce the DISC project, which is kind of what this talk is about. And then I will talk a bit about the results of the project. Of course, because it has been a very long project for 5 years, which is coming to an end quite soon. we have done a lot of like studies, and we have had a lot of these kind of different strands of research in the project. So I'm not kind of able to present you everything that we have done. But I decided to focus on introducing some of the conceptual results. So how we have kind of conceptualized digital inequality, digital literacy, and smart cities. And secondly, I'm going to talk about a bit about the potential solutions, which means that how we could kind of tackle digital inequality in smart cities. What are the kind of potential means to kind of solve the issue? Okay, so this is the brief introduction to me. I actually have my background in cultural anthropology, so I'm a social scientist. But since the start of my research career, since the beginning of my PhD research, I have done this very interdisciplinary research. So actually, I have worked at the departments of computer science for the most of my career. So I have collaborated with computer scientists, designers, especially with architects, interaction designers, and so on. And I have kind of become a sort of a disciplinary hybrid. So nowadays I call myself a design anthropologist, but you can also kind of think that I'm a HEI researcher, because most of my publications are published in HEI conferences or HEI journals. And I also wanted to mention that in the beginning of the September this year, I will change university, because I got a tenure track from the University of Vaasa, which is also in Finland. And I will be working in the field of digital media and media economy in green transition. I actually don't know if this term green transition is only a European Union term, or do you use it? But it kind of it refers to environmental sustainability. So my focus is going to shift a bit towards that direction in the future. And on the left-hand side in the slide, you have like 3 very broad themes that I've been focusing during my research career. So of course, because my background is in anthropology, I have been studying the kind of a role of digital technology in people's lives. Secondly, I have been looking at the broader societal implications of digital technology. And thirdly, I have also been doing and facilitating participatory design processes. So especially after I did my PhD, I got really interested in design and design research. So I kind of started, or I had an opportunity in my previous postdoctoral projects to focus on that side too, and kind of lead even this kind of a very broad multi-stakeholder processes. Okay, then a few words about this project, which is behind this talk and which is funding my visit as well. So digital inequality in smart cities. It's a 5-year project, so very long one, funded by the Research Council of Finland, which is the most important research funding body in Finland. And the idea, in a kind of a nutshell, is to study urban digitalization, which refers, for example, to digitalizing public services and smart city development, with the concept of digital inequalities, which refers here to disparities in people's digital capability, including access, use, and understanding. And I will kind of open up those terms very shortly a bit more. And the project has basically had these 2 kind of different parts. And the first one has focused on producing new knowledge on how city inhabitants experience digital inequalities. And the second one has been maybe a bit more applied or solution-oriented, in a sense that we have kind of tried to find ways to enhance digital inequality. So find a kind of a solutions or create new concepts that we could kind of use in that kind of digital inclusion work. And location-wise, the focus of the project has been on the capital region of Finland. It has about 1 million inhabitants. And to kind of give you a kind of sense of scale. And I have also done some field work in Barcelona, Spain, which in turn has about 1.6 million inhabitants. And the idea has been kind of to compare the kind of digital inclusion approaches of these cities. And this kind of comes from my anthropological background, that I kind of want to create these kind of comparisons between different locales. So smart city agenda has been in my focus because it has been very popular in Finland, at least for last 20 years. So almost all the big cities in Finland have a different kind of smart city strategies, for instance. And Barcelona, on the other hand, is one of the world's leading smart cities. And it is interesting place to study, in a sense that it kind of started its smart city development or smart city journey by being this quite typical, you could maybe say, smart city, which has this kind of a neoliberal kind of a basis. But then it kind of changed its course, and in recent years it has kind of explicitly intended to distance actually itself from these kind of a neoliberal smart city ideas. And the municipal government of smart city has invested quite heavily, especially on its kind of inhabitants' well-being, and they try to nurture this kind of a very human-centric approach to smart cities and urban development. And I think they call it technological humanism. And Finland is, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to change the slide yet. Sorry, I can't find my mouse. Apologies. Yeah, I would just like to see my notes, but well, I have to survive without my notes. To give a bit more context about Finland and why this kind of what is special in Finnish smart city approach. It's kind of a very connected with public services and public sector, in a sense that in Finland we have this Nordic welfare state model, which means that we have really extensive and also expensive public services. And the smart city approach has been kind of seen as a remedy that we could offer these services like cheaper, for instance, to everybody, and in a more efficient ways by digitalizing services, like entire services or some aspects of those services. But in the end, it kind of often ends up in a situation where those services are more expensive. They are kind of more difficult to access for many people that don't have enough digital skills. So this is a kind of an overall approach that I've been using in my project. So it is based on design anthropology, which basically means combining anthropological perspectives, theories, methods with design thinking. And actually, a lot of emphasis has been on this kind of understanding phase. But we have had some studies and some kind of sub-studies in the project that kind of have been have went through this whole entire cycle, so that we have actually prototyped something and tested it in practice too. But then I'm going to talk a bit about these kind of a conceptual understandings that we have developed in the project. And by the way, when I'm kind of talking about we, I'm referring actually a lot of people, because even though this fellowship is a kind of an individual project, I have had I think in total 6 very talented research assistants who have worked with me and, for example, collected data for me, done analysis, and so on. And I have had a lot of colleagues that I have worked with. And I'm also acting as a leader in another project, which is a very broad project. It has like 5 leaders and 25 plus researchers working in it. And topics of that other project are kind of mixed with this one. So I really have not done anything alone. I want to emphasize this because I overall have this kind of a very collaborative approach to research. But yeah, digital inequality, I don't know, many of you are probably familiar with this concept, but just to give a kind of a quick definition, the concept of digital divide that was born at the turn of the century is kind of a behind digital inequality too. And digital divide actually originally referred to the people, or if you have an access to internet or if you don't have an access to the internet. So it was the kind of a digital divide. But of course, nowadays things are much more complex, and thus we actually nowadays have these 2 different kind of bodies of scholarship that are studying these topics. We have digital inequality, like research, and then we have digital literacy research. And if I kind of want to give this very kind of a broad general definition, what is meant by digital inequality, it usually kind of has these maybe 3 levels. First of all, it includes or entails the ability to access information and digital technology. Secondly, it entails skills, that do you have knowledge and experience of technologies, can you use them? And this B part is actually often divided into, so it includes like functional and operational skills, that can you actually open your laptop, can you use the programs or applications? And then it has this kind of a critical part, that can you actually critically assess the information? So can you actually, do you have this kind of a media literacy? And third, I have here the understanding of the role of digital technology in society, which is a kind of can be understood as a third part of this definition. And these 3 ABC factors, or kind of themes, issues, I don't know what to call them, are then affected by different socioeconomic and sociocultural factors. And all of these factors that are now in the slide they already determine people's possibilities to actually effectively function as a part of society. And this kind of course, applies especially to societies that are kind of digitalizing in accelerating rate, like Finland. So everyday life actions in these digitalizing cities, from accessing health services to using public transport, are kind of dependent on people's digital capability. So one important part of the DISC project has been creating a kind of a framework. And we have done this by exploring the central intersections of smart city development, socio-digital inequalities, and digital literacy based on literacy. And one important kind of one of the central results that I want to highlight here was that from this literacy, we recognized two main approaches to digital inequality in smart cities. And according to this kind of a first approach, so-called smart citizens' digital capability is important because only tech-savvy inhabitants can comply with the changes brought by intense urban digitalization. So according to this definition or approach, so-called smart citizens' role is kind of to adopt technologies, to adapt to what is kind of going on, and of course to act as a data points that are feeding data to tech companies and governments. But we also found this kind of a different approach and definition. And according to this second definition, citizens' digital capability is actually important because only people who have kind of a relatively good level of digital literacy and understanding can participate, collaborate, co-produce, create, and also lead, and maybe also most importantly, exercise resistance. So according to this second definition, so-called smart citizens should have this kind of actual agency, and they should be able to participate in shaping their living environment. And I believe that in democratic societies, we must choose the latter option. And this is one of the versions of the kind of a framework that we created. And we did this in order to clarify the relationships between different socioeconomic and sociocultural factors and digital literacy. And when we were going through this previous conceptualizations and previous literature, we noted that there are actually some aspects in digital literacy that are quite often neglected. And in this image, these are titled as technological understanding and the ability to imagine alternative futures. So they are up there. And these refer to the knowledge that kind of enables understanding the social, political, ecological, and economic dimensions of technology development, and also to a kind of awareness that we do have a choice when it comes to technological development. And there are a few scholars that have written about those more maybe higher level skills or aspects of digital literacy. but unfortunately, they kind of get almost completely forgotten in different kinds of like practical digital literacy programs. So for example, when digital literacy is put into practice in schools, they often focus on this access aspect and also these functional skills, sometimes also like critical skills, but this kind of a technological understanding or technological awareness is a quite rare focus in those practical programs. So I'm sorry for the wall of text. I'm not going to go through all of this. I just kind of wanted to show a couple of examples of researchers and research that have studied the topic before as a kind of a reference. So for example, Ylipulli and MacGregor have coined the term radical digital citizenship, which kind of overlaps with our ideas of this technological understanding or technological awareness that should be part of digital literacy. And they kind of claim that individuals should be capable of critically analyzing digital technologies and their socio-political, environmental, and economic effects. And they should also kind of be able to imagine alternative views for technological developments. On the other hand, we have also with my colleague Minna Viikärän used the ideas of Paola Rebucchini in one of our articles. She has written about critical agency that we also found very relevant. It's kind of a more holistic, offers a basis for a more holistic approach to digital citizenship, as we claim in this article, and kind of entails the aspect of this resistance. So Ylipulli and MacGregor, and also myself and Minna Viikärän, we kind of have pointed out that at the moment, most of the education on digital citizenship kind of fails to center the critical understanding of the digital. And it even actively silences particular topics and aspects of digital citizenship that are kind of linked to the exploitative nature of digital spheres. So the next question actually is that how this kind of a radical digital citizenship or radical digital agency can then be increased and spread among the citizens that are living in smart cities or digitalizing cities. And so we arrive to a few potential solutions that we have kind of explored in my project. First of all, our own studies and also like previous research points out that it's super important to kind of recognize the communities and pre-existing networks as focal points for any kind of initiatives that are aimed at enhancing individuals' digital proficiency. So a kind of a national campaigns or targeting just the individual are not maybe as effective as kind of a targeting a kind of a meso-social level. And one example that we have explored are public libraries in Finland. Public libraries actually have quite interesting like societal role in Finland. It is connected very much to the history of Finland and a kind of a nation building process, but I don't have time to go into that in detail. But anyway, they are kind of a very respected institutions. They are relatively well funded, and people are kind of using library services a lot in Finland. And libraries also offer a broad range of different kinds of services, not just kind of a books and the like conventional stuff, but it is actually written in Finnish library legislation that they need to educate citizens about new technologies to enable active citizenship. I actually think that that term, active citizenship, it's directly from the Finnish Library Act. So libraries have, especially in the capital region, they have different kinds of fab labs or maker spaces. They are offering lectures about new technologies. They have arranged different kinds of workshops. And we have also, as a part of my project, facilitated this kind of a long-term collaboration with public libraries. And in that study, we created a kind of a library-themed VR application to be used in digital literacy education. But there are, however, also like several challenges that libraries face. We, for example, have noted that they actually don't have enough technical expertise. The librarians are not really kind of trained to be like, you know, digital experts and experts on technology. They have a lack of focus on especially technology because they have so many other services that they offer to, and a lot of different kinds of like obligations, and also lack of funding is one issue, even though they are quite well funded. They kind of still struggle at the moment because even though they are they have done and are doing excellent work on digital inclusion, but they are really at the moment at least in Finland, flooded with individuals that are seeking digital support. Even, for example, banks in Finland, they tell to individuals that are unable to use the digital banking services that go to library and ask for help. So libraries don't really have resources to serve everybody who is in need. And they often need to focus on these immediate, small, narrow problems that people have. So they don't have the resources to develop a very a multi-level and comprehensive digital support that would actually respond to the or align with the framework that I presented. My other example actually is from Barcelona. So I have done some field work in Barcelona, and in 2022, I spent a bit longer time in the city. I was almost 3 months there, studying the digital inclusion politics and practices they have. And back then, I found about this center called Canodrom, and it is actually a a project of the city, but it's also this physical center. And it differs from the public libraries that I just talked about in a sense that it focuses only on technology. So it also has all the expertise needed and it's focus basically on digital technology. And the idea is that this Canodrom Center acts as an interface between the city technologies, and citizens. And what it does, it, for example, offers digital training from very basic skills like learning how to use your email to a more advanced level. And what is interesting is that all the training they offer is implemented with open source technologies. So they don't, for example, use Google or any kind of a like commercial big tech platform. And the whole core idea of the center is to make debates about technology and democracy more approachable. And they have kind of I've actually now visited the center already 3 times and kind of interviewed the managers, discussed with them, also participated in some of the kind of workshops and activities they have had. And the activities that they have are focusing on digital culture, open source technology, digital rights, and democratic participation. And they kind of overall have this really interesting approach that they are kind of trying to establish a relationship with the kind of a local community where they are kind of located. On the other hand, the scale of the activities is usually quite small. They are kind of more focusing on the quality and kind of on creating a deep connections with people than trying to reach large segments of the city inhabitants. So actually to kind of properly to raise awareness, each neighborhood would kind of require its own conundrum, and also kind of creating change through this type of effort is probably going to take a long time. And of course, like I said, it's a project, so its funding and existence is dependent on who governs the city. And I have also talked with the managers that kind of assessing the impact of this kind of initiative is very difficult. And of course, this issue is related to the previous one, that without the proven effects, it can be difficult to justify funding for these types of projects. So this is a very kind of it's amazing initiative. First time when I visited the center, and also during the second and third time, I was kind of about to cry, because I was like, you are doing so amazing work. You are doing just what you kind of should be doing. But it's also quite fragile in a sense, and the scale, like I said, is quite small. But anyhow, it's one of the maybe most interesting examples that I have found during my project about this kind of possibilities of digital inclusion. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Keep an eye on my screen for any questions from our online audience, but we might just start with looking in the room. Any reactions, questions? Yes.
Thank you very much, Johanna. I'm interested in this notion of smart citizen and sort of how we often sort of immediately think about tech savviness when we think about smart citizens. And, you know, I have this feeling that there are a lot of people who are tech savvy but not really interested in civic matters. So I'm wondering whether we actually want to sort of add civic, you know, smart, civics. Yeah, sort of civic awareness notion, because I think sometimes sort of this notion on technology is a bit limiting, and there are people who need literacy, but that step to sort of the critical engagement, I think, is very big step. So what's, you know, what are avenues to get there, I guess.
Yeah. I think this Ganodrome Center that I mentioned in the end of my talk, it is trying to do that as well, to kind of highlight the importance of participation and democracy in general, not just kind of in terms of technologies or connected to technologies, but overall that, okay, it is kind of important. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have any clear answer to that.
Civic literacy.
Yes,
Civic literacy. Yeah. And I guess it also kind of depends on the, country and society, that how aware people are about their kind of civic rights and the kind of that how their kind of a democratic position in society, in a sense, of kind of their role in democracy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so I guess, can I squeeze in one online? The question from Michael Blomich and Thomas, well, how do we create more kind of drones, as in the slide that she's just showing, as in how can that model be recreated or scaled up to have more of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm kind of in the process of negotiating with one of the cities in the capital region of Finland, that how we could actually replicate the model in Finland, because I have been in now many events in Finland, like presenting the results of my project to the city officials or city managers and decision makers. They have been very interested in kind of hearing about my project. And always when I talk about Ganodrome, they are like, okay, that sounds amazing. We want to have that too. And it's interesting that those decision makers of the cities are not really kind of necessarily aware of these initiatives that other European cities have. They don't have resources to kind of do that kind of a benchmarking in a sense. So I think it's kind of it's my role as a researcher to kind of spread the information about Ganodrome,
Right.
for instance.
Thank you. There's another one that will pass on to
Thank you. My name is Bernadette. Thank you very much for your talk. I was very involved in early efforts in the Obama administration around local government video programs. And then for my PhD, looked at Australia and New Zealand and how much they engaged with supported what the leadership and culture and data intensive organizations looked at. Right on the heels, the impetus was Trump 1.0 defunding and anything that had to do with accountability and transparency. So to your point about depends on the context of the country and whether they value democracy and democratic participation and accountability and transparency, which ultimately I found out that the US government does not value that under recent administrations. So I guess my question is, these are obviously good for society, but are largely funded by the largesse of government, regional governments, international governments. So kind of how do we square this in the era of greater authoritarian governments, both in Europe, certainly in the United States, which until 10 years ago was the biggest producer of openly available data. And that whole open ecosystem, open data, open licenses, open portals, etc. Like, I love this, but in the current reality of authoritarianism and defunding of anything that has to do with accountability and transparency, how do we take this and honor it in the face of defunding programs? Have you run into that, or?
Yeah, I kind of understand. I fully understand what you mean, but obviously I don't have any solution to that issue because it's a huge one. But I kind of try to stay positive, and I kind of think that if we kind of manage to spread this kind of a technological understanding, digital skills more broadly, it kind of pays back in a sense that people are then more aware of for example, sorry, I don't know. Yes. And this kind of efforts to this kind of sorry, I'm really blanking. My jet lag tries to kind of kick in. Sorry, I can't remember what I was about to say, but yeah,
I can email you some thoughts and questions, but I do think the whole state of the world, that of the research community that funded worked on these efforts in their own capacity as altruistic, you know, techno-positive people, that many of them have been hired by Google and proprietary companies, OpenAI. And then others have just lost the steam to carry on because things have gotten defunded. In New Zealand, our neighbors in Aalto in New Zealand were some of the world's most respected advocates around open technologies, these kinds of things, empowering civil servants, empowering citizens. They had a really good relationship with government and civil society, but then they got a conservative government and defunded those programs. And so those people retreated.
Yeah.
So that's a big, anyway, it's just something to be aware of with these, is that they are very vulnerable. You said that this is fragile. What you might have been referring to, but they're very vulnerable. To changes in leadership at a government level and funding.
Yeah,
I think
fully
it also
agree with
just
you.
points to the precarity of being reliant on external funding, but at the same time, there's examples of, like, I'm thinking Arab Spring and umbrella movement and similar political movements that have accelerated an uptake of a whole bunch of communication technology or platforms, and whether it's Fire Chat or Ushabili or Signal, famously, that can actually work towards uptake, increase of literacy, not because there's an impetus from governments and libraries. It's actually out of the necessity or the urgency of trying to protect yourself and not be seen by, say, authoritarian regimes. So people are then trying to figure out how can we still chat and go about our work without that the Elon Musk or the Trumps can spy on us.
Were those things you just mentioned besides Signal, I didn't recognize them, are they all grassroots, bottom up?
Ushabili is very grassroots. It was done in 2007 as part of the post-election violence in Kenya, and it led to a whole bunch of other crisis mapping kind of scenarios. I think it was even used in Japan for the nuclear fallout. Fire Chat is a peer-to-peer chat system that was used for a little bit. It doesn't require an internet connection. It just goes peer-to-peer from device to device. That's online. I don't know if that's still around, but again, it was about being autonomous and very resilient. So not just technological, breakdowns, but also to be using those communication flows in disaster situations. I quickly asked a question from Kavita, who joined us online. PhD grad from our department now, the Sustainability Lead for Populous architecture firm. Curious about the next steps. You mentioned you will research more within the realm of environmental sustainability. What is that going to look like? Will it look at the digital within the environmental sustainability conversation?
Yeah, a great question. I'm looking into, or going to kind of study how we could combine this kind of a technological understanding and awareness of the kind of also the ecological dimensions of digital technologies with this kind of a digital inequality studies. But I don't know, did that sentence make any sense? But yeah, kind of combining this digital inequality with this kind of a sustainability, environmental sustainability thinking and theories. And I think I mentioned in my abstract the concept of eco-digital agency. It is something that we have been developing with one of my colleagues, but I decided to leave it out because this was already quite full of different, topics, this presentation. So I decided that I'm not going to kind of go into that, but that eco-digital agency refers exactly to the kind of how to combine the awareness of ecological concerns with this kind of other concerns that are related to digital technologies.
Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? No? Yes? Yes, please.
I'm just thinking about sorry, Shark is my name. Just been doing PhD here, visual arts design, but also mental health. And yeah, I have some idea of public spaces built as well. I'm thinking and going back in my life and research and experience, coming back to the one-on-one, normal communication on one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And sharing that way as well. It's, sometimes we are building these big spaces and always trying to rely on, the governments or whatever, which is so very fragile. I'm thinking, let's not forget about, our, basic connection with one another and family units as well, where the information, then you should sit around table, have dinner and breakfast, and you can share those things. That's my only comment because, I'm from Czech Republic, so, I've also been to some changes and being here and seeing currently as well the changes of government always,
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't need to be this. My examples were, of course, quite like top-down examples, but like you two mentioned, they can also be more like these grassroots or bottom-up initiatives that are supporting digital inclusion.
Having parties,
Well, in that spirit of having come together in person, collectively enjoy Johanna seminar.
Thank you.
There will be another event hosted by the VMRC. There's obviously multiple events, but the next one, the program organizers, the program of creating better digital future is going to be on the 28th of April, I believe, and both Johanna and Peter have been put on the spot to be part of a panel discussion.
It's Monday, Friday, it'll be a Monday.
Yes, yeah, the better Fridays on Monday.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
Thank you so much for lunch.